Lesson 6: Customer Development Process. Now that you have a minimum viable product, MVP, you can deploy it as a first version to show other people what you plan to take to market. You should also use it to actually test the market. Typically, as your product or service evolves, the nature and specifics of the customer must be refined. Remember, you must always maintain the connection between the offering and the user. This is the customer discovery phase and is the first phase in the creation of your business model. A business model is how your company operates and what your business actually does to make money. During this phase, you'll receive feedback from the customers who actually use the MVP and not just people who are thinking out loud without actually trying it out. Feedback from real customers who actually use your product is the customer validation phase. You can take that real user feedback and pivot and experiment as necessary until the business model makes sense and works. Then you will focus on your sales and marketing roadmap that will lead you into customer creation, which is the third stop in your business model. This is the point of sale, the moment you've been working toward. In this business model, marketing, business development, aka biz dev, and sales are mission critical to the success of your company. If your business development is not opening the right doors and making the right strategic connections, then your marketing and sales efforts will struggle, as will your engineering and other vital functions in the company that rely on business development. If you don't market to the right people, it makes it extremely difficult to sell your offering. The bottom line is, if you don't have a market, then you don't have customers or sales, and your bank account has no money. Period. Full stop. Pretty much end of discussion. The promise. By the end of this lesson, you'll have a better understanding of the customer development journey and how to pivot your MVP as many times as necessary toward a clear product market fit to create those initial customers. You'll also have a better understanding of marketing, business development, and sales, and what to do about it to secure your first customer and make money. Understanding and developing these areas creates the stream from which you can source water from your business to live and grow. Why now? It's best to create and refine your business plans before actually selling your product, to avoid having to rework your plans over and over again. Once the focus is on the customer creation portion of the business model, you should see it as a final presentation. You should not have to go back and rework your presentation. You want the business model to be as complete as possible when you share it with your audience. Continually backtracking after your customer creation efforts is inefficient, and it can be confusing for your team and customers as well. So plan beforehand. In the early stages of your venture, you should focus on the details of the company, sympathizing with the customer's pains, figuring out how to enhance their gains, defining the offering, and creating a minimum viable product. Every now and then, take a step back and look at the big picture. Ask yourself if all this information is lining up. Do you have an offering that's going to work, or is it simply a hypothesis that needs to be tested, monitored, and tweaked? Do you have data that provides meaningful insight to indicate that your minimum viable product is delighting your customers? How do you know when you should pivot? This is where the customer development process kicks in. This process assumes that startups have untested hypotheses about their business model. It starts with a key idea that there are no facts inside your building, so you gotta get outside to test them. The basis used is the same as it is when conducting a science experiment. Pose a business model hypothesis, design an experiment, get out of the building and test it. Then take the data to gather some insight. The data will lead to one of three conclusions. Either it will, 1, validate the hypothesis, which is great and means that you're on the right track. 2, invalidate the hypothesis, which essentially means you have to go back to the drawing board to iron out the kinks and create a different hypothesis. Repeat process to assess the new hypothesis. Or 3, modify the hypothesis and take it out of the building to test again. Customer development consists of 4 main steps. The first step is customer discovery. At this step, the founder's vision is being tested using a series of business model hypotheses. You'll test your hypothesis and offering with your target audience to actually see if the proposed solution matches with what you assume the customer's desired outcome was. This could be a subsegment of your beachhead market or a focus group. Go outside the circle of your family and friends to obtain honest feedback. This is an opportunity for you to see if your hypothesis and offering does what it promises, update your customer personas and problem scenarios in your product requirements document and minimum viable product plan. The next step is customer validation. At this step, you will gather quantifiable data to validate it against the feedback from the previous step. Pick a hypothesis or assumption about your offering and test that one at a time. This approach will not only save you from a lot of confusion, more importantly, it will present to you reliable and unbiased set of data. A good hypothesis could be structured as follows. If we deliver a certain Facebook campaign against a certain set of keywords, we'll see a conversion rate result of 5%. Then use the data to decide if it validates or invalidates your hypothesis and how the hypothesis should be modified if required. Customer validation can be as simple as creating a realistic demo rendering of your product, posting it online, driving some traffic to it, and see how you do on signups, comments, and sharing. This is the method that Dropbox initially used as discussed in the previous step. Alternatively, it can be hands-on in a concierge approach, where you have the customer submit their input on the front end and you manually execute the tasks on the back end. The concierge approach allows for more human interaction, making it a great tool for direct customer responses. Use this approach if you're not exactly sure what the solution should be and if you need more ideas. Both approaches allow you to test your minimum viable product without breaking the bank. There's no need for any technology or complex algorithms to build these amazingly effective prototypes. At this juncture, it's important to note that customer validation's main task is to test if the business model is repeatable and scalable. If not, customer discovery should be repeated. Both customer discovery and validation steps are meant to test your problem-solution fit or product-market fit. Going through these two steps naturally forces you to validate your learning, reiterate, and get laser-focused. At this point, the term pivot gets thrown around a lot. You may have heard it from other founders, investors, and during pitch presentations. Do you know what it really means? Essentially, when your first business model around your minimum viable product isn't working, and this happens more often than not, the founder and the team pivot to plan B. These are deep breath moments. To put it simply, your hypothesis is invalidated. A pivot is an action plan that tells you what to do when your customer validation data does not meet your offering. An example of a pivot would be changing your revenue model from freemium users to paid subscription users. This in turn impacts your market segments, feature list, etc., amongst other things. This process is iterative, constant, and downright brutal. It can take months to achieve a monetizable product market fit. Our advice is to not be afraid of change. Fail fast and pivot faster. Pivoting doesn't necessarily mean desperation. It can be a tool to discover additional growth you might otherwise have overlooked. It's always important to think about not just how much your product may be used, but also its potential uses, and that may realize some value creation opportunities. Some of the major tech companies in the world have all experienced pivots, including Twitter, which started off as a podcast directory known as Odeo, which aggregated thousands of podcasts. Another lesser-known but equally powerful example will be a company called Android. Sometime back in 2005, before being acquired by Google, Android pivoted from being an operating system for cameras to mobile phones. The rest, as they say, is history. When pivoting, make sure your investors are kept in the loop. If you think the company's strategy is going to change, start planting that seed with your team, board of directors, and shareholders at least 3 to 6 months ahead of time so there are no surprises. A drastic change without careful deliberations with your investors can seriously strain the relationship and make the pivot seem insurmountable, especially if there's resistance. When it comes to raising funds for a new product, you'll need their full support to move forward with your revolutionary idea, so get investor feedback early. Once you've achieved a monetizable product market fit, it's time to put the repeatability and scalability of your business model to the test. You're now ready to move to the third step of customer creation. This step marks the start of execution, i.e., sales. When you're ready to transit from a startup into a functional organization focused on executing on a validated business model, you're then ready to move to the fourth step of company building that's geared towards repeatable, consistent, and rapid execution. Until you're through with those 4 steps, you can't really begin any biz dev. It's only after you've validated your business model hypothesis can this really come into play. Too many first-time founders rush to hire the biz dev guy without having a validated product. As mentioned in the introduction, the 3 aspects are marketing, business development, and sales. Experience and time have proven that they should be done in that order. Here's why. Marketing is the identification of who will care enough about your offering that they'll give you money for it, where those people are located on planet Earth, and how and when to communicate with those potential buyers in those markets. Business development is the identification and securing of strategic partnerships and alliances and agreements to do the things that are needed to open doors and facilitate success for all activities in the company in those markets. For example, let's say that your offering is a handheld electronic device that helps people manage physical pain. You have identified potential customers as elderly people who experience constant pain such as arthritis, etc. There is a high chance your would-be customers would want to know if the device actually helps with pain management or if it's just another gimmick. From a business development perspective, you might create an alliance with a reputable medical research center to perform a validation study of your device and how it really helped people to manage pain associated with arthritis. The results of that study could then be used by sales, but without the initial target market identification, you would not have known to trigger that business development alliance with the research facility. Essentially, if you do not know what the offering actually is, and if you don't know yet to whom and where the offering will be sold, it will be a challenge to know which strategic relationships will be required or even helpful. Sales is the transaction with the buyer. It's the moment when they give you money or equivalent and deliver the product or service. When your marketing and business development are done correctly, then sales should naturally follow. If sales do not follow, you will need to revisit all marketing, business development, and sales plans to make sure that they're harmonized in their construction and execution and that you believe all that is in order. Most startup founders tend to confuse marketing, business development, and sales for a few reasons. Back in the day, a farmer simply made an agreement with a landowner that he could put a stand at the intersection of two well-trafficked paths to sell the produce from his farm. Identifying the intersection and building the stand along with signage is part of marketing. The agreement with the landowner to put the stand in that location is business development, and the transactions at the stand are sales. Initially, these three functions were just one integrated set of activities that needed to be done, and no one called it marketing versus business development versus sales. The world of modern business has differentiated each of these activities, and we treat them separately, but you need to be sure that you harmonize them and make them work together seamlessly. Now that we know the importance of the order of marketing, business development, and sales, let's get into some of the key nitty-gritty on each one. Marketing. Marketing consists of three basic parts: identifying the market, clarifying who in the market is the target, creating the plan for messaging the target. Identifying the market. Don't just pick a geography because you're familiar with it, or because it's the geography that you personally know best. It might be that the geography that you know best is the ideal market, but we don't know that yet. Market research is a very specific skill, and there are companies that you can work with to do this work for you if you don't know how. Engage your network to find a good company, or if you want to do the work yourself, then you can start by mining the reports of Forrester and Gartner, and even doing carefully engaged searches on the internet. You would be looking for market reports and articles about trends in markets that are compatible with the product or offering that you're creating. Work to identify where in the world the best geography might be for your product. Your guess might be Europe, but the research might prove that Japan is the ideal market. You won't know until you dig into the market research and puzzle it through. Clarifying who. Very few products work for every person equally well in a market. Most products work for one group more than another. The question is, which group inside the market will best respond to your product? Retired people, mature working professionals, young professionals, stay-at-home parents, teenagers, children? How will you know? Again, market research will help you. You could attempt to explore the world of focus groups, where you get diverse groups of people to try your product and see who responds positively and who does not. The best way to know, of course, is to put it on a shelf, be it a physical shelf in a store or on the internet, and see who buys it. But that takes time, money, and track record that startups typically do not have. The alternative would be to do your best. Experiment with various groups to the best of your ability and try to narrow in on your primary target customer. Creating the plan. You may begin planning specially crafted messages to the market and customer. Once they have been identified, you'll need to figure out how to best accomplish this message placement. You might decide to go traditional and print advertisements in magazines, or leverage on something classic such as billboards, radio, or TV, etc. Or you may decide that you want to leverage the internet and go with banner ads, Google AdWords, Facebook ads, and other internet-based vehicles for getting the word out. You may even consider a combination of both traditional and internet. Pause for a moment here to realize that the plan for your messaging and medium of messaging should be in line with your market and consumer. For instance, If you're rolling out a product that requires direct call to action, billboards may not be ideal because 99.9% of people reading a billboard will not call or visit a website. Billboards are great for brand building and supporting an ad campaign, but definitely not the medium for direct response. In the same billboard example, consider instead if you were advertising in a city like London, where a significant chunk of young professionals, or yuppies as they're called, ride the tube which runs underground, making their eyeballs less on advertising above ground. Or if your offering were targeted at retirees and you choose Snapchat as your medium for advertising, simple market research would have told you that 71% of Snapchat users are below the age of 34. No matter how good your messaging and how much you allocate to ad spend on Snapchat, chances of it hitting your target audience are slim to none. Hopefully, these simple examples showcase how important creating a plan is. When planning, don't forget that marketing costs, so be very sure to model the associated costs and work them according to your budget. Work closely with all internal parties from executive leadership to engineering, support, business development, and sales to make certain that everyone understands the market and specific customers inside the market that you're targeting. Business development, 2 basic parts. Internal needs and requirements. Creating the plan for securing relationships with those external candidates. Internal needs and requirements. Work to understand what strategic relationships are needed to make your product and market launch a success. Do you need a certain type of engineering tool, example, a codex or games engineer or intellectual property license, etc., so that the engineering can be completed? Do you need a validation study from a medical research clinic or a government or a customer group? Do you need government approval or other legal permissions to market, sell, and distribute your product in targeted market? Do you need an alliance with a competitor in the market? Work to understand what strategic alliances, approvals, and more are needed by the company. Create the plan for securing relationships with those external candidates. Sales. Closing a deal in 5 basic parts: identification, warming, discovery, presentation, close. Identification. Marketing identified the type of customers. Now it's up to sales to build approach and rapport to secure the transaction with each customer. Sometimes salespeople will prospect for customers in different places than where marketing has prepared the market. Make sure that the sales team is up to speed with marketing plans so they can remain focused and prospect in the right places. Once you're in the correct market, you need to think about the types of people with whom you will engage. There are 3 basic types of people: tail waggers, influencers, and decision makers. Tail waggers are people who happily listen and might get excited, but they ultimately do not make the decision to buy, because that's made by the decision maker. Salespeople often waste valuable time with tail waggers. Therefore, it is a priority to pinpoint the decision maker as soon as possible when talking to potential consumers. Please note, it is okay to ask people if they're able to make buying decisions. If a person is excited but says that they don't know the decision maker or they need to search for who might be a decision maker, then they are a tail wagger. It's best not to spend too much time with a tail wagger, but do leave them with something they can take with them, a takeaway, whether it be a coupon, brochure, or memorable and repeatable tidbit about your product or service and how to get in touch when they have the ability to buy. Influencers don't have signature authority on the purchase, but the decision maker asks their opinion before buying. Sometimes influencers are gatekeepers for the decision makers. If a person is excited and can tell you who makes decisions and then makes an introduction, they are an influencer. On the contrary, if they know who the decision maker is, but they tell you that they cannot or will not make an introduction, then they could be feigning their enthusiasm, or they're simply a tail wagger who's pretending to have influence or decision authority. Think a mid to low-level manager at a company doing initial research for a new product or service the department at his company might be acquiring. He may come across as an influencer, but could really just be the person collating data regarding the different choices for his superior to make the final decision. Another classic example of a non-decision maker is a child and their parents. The child may listen and be excited about a product offering, tail wagger, but they don't have the money or decision power to make the purchase. However, that child will relay their enthusiasm to their parents, who may or may not make the purchase. In the event the sale occurs, the child has played the role of the influencer. These days, we have the famous indirect influencers with internet and social media. Instagram, YouTube, and Snapchat, influencers are looked up to by consumers and play a big role in getting to a sale because their opinion on a product is viewed to be valuable. Either way, when selling, remember that it's important to leave them with a transferable takeaway, such as a brochure or coupon, as you did with the tail wagger, so that the decision maker has a way to make that purchase when they decide to. Decision makers ultimately make the sale final. Presentations to decision makers are typically surrounded by influencers. Be patient with influencer questions and the decision maker concerns. Warming. Depending on the culture of the influencer and decision maker, you might jump straight into the discovery and presentation and work toward a close. But in some cultures, you need to take time to talk, dine, and get to know each other. Discovery. The next step in closing any sale is referred to as discovery stage. Here, you'll take time to ask a number of questions designed to gather facts about the customer, uncover their feelings, problems, or motivations, and determine what their problem is so that you can provide them with a solution. Explore with the influencer and decision maker to ensure that you know their pain points and desires so that you can prepare a presentation of your offering that will address their specific needs and concerns. Ask lots of well-thought-out questions and make sure to actually listen. Presentation. The presentation step is critical in closing your sale. The first rule of presentations is never give the same presentation twice. You might approach two customers who on the surface look identical, but they might have very different motivations to buy. Don't skip the discovery. Spend time to understand all details of what makes your business-to-customer relationship unique before you sit down and simply show the same slides or demo and say the same things that you've shown and said to customers before them. Your presentation should be factual and providing a clear solution to their problem. Avoid overselling or overpromising. Decision makers today are presented with a lot of buying options and they can smell insincerity from a mile away. When planning your presentation agenda, plan for the presentation to take no more than half of any allotted time. Leave ample room for questions and answers. Close. The call to action is what happens before the official close. Always ask for what you want and need, and never give a presentation without a clear call to action. Closing means that you get their signature on a purchase order or cash or check. Someone saying yes, or that they will buy in the future without a signature is not considered a close. Close, get the money, then celebrate. Keep in mind that a critical part of the close is the successful delivery and follow-through of the offering. Ensure that the customer is happy with the purchase. The easiest next sale will be from someone who has already bought from you or from their network. So make sure that they're happy. If you're unable to close the sale at that moment, set a follow-up date to do so. Here is an example of how we used these strategies in action. One of Startup Course's founders was once consulting to a company that was struggling to understand why they were not closing more sales. They had planned their approach, had beautiful presentation materials, they understood everything that marketing and business development was doing, and they were presenting many times a day. Still, were closing very few deals. It turns out that there were several problems. One, they were prioritizing their attention based on the bigger name brand potential customers, rather than on the optimal potential customer regardless of their size or how recognizable their brand marketing. Two, they were presenting to anyone and everyone who would listen, without knowing if any of those presentations were to key influencers or decision makers' identification. 3. Every presentation was the exact same carefully prepared script to the same set of slides and handout materials. The presentation was excellent, but it was not customized to the specific needs and requirements of each customer. So, with these principles in mind, we did several things. 1. We inventoried everything that each customer said that they needed, not wanted, but actually needed. We then scored whether or not we could legitimately satisfy each need of each customer, resulting in a score. 2. We then stack ranked the scores to see which had the combined highest scores. Tellingly, we found that the company was investing most of its time and energy on the lowest scoring prospective customers and investing very little on the highest scoring potential customers. 3. We then created a plan for reorienting and approaching the high-value prospects based on the needs analysis. We customized the messages to fit the needs of each customer, showing them how we fulfilled their needs. It was vitally important to this new planning that we identified influencers and decision makers and presented to them without wasting time on tail waggers. 4. We then had brief weekly meetings with each salesperson to discuss each customer and their progress to closing a deal with them. Each meeting focused on documenting when a meeting was had with whom, what was discussed, what concerns were raised, what promises or pledges were made, etc. We then focused on any barriers that needed to be addressed and next steps. The potential customer was then given a probability to close score. That helped with our planning across the company. And 5, Within 1 month of this new approach, the sales team was securing customers and revenue started coming into the company. So, looking at your market, who are the prospective customers? Do you know what they actually need? Score your ability to satisfy the needs of all prospects. Then score which can satisfy your needs. Then stack rank those scores. Then craft a presentation specifically for the highest scoring prospects. Identify the influencers and decision makers, track the barriers, and plan solutions. Then close deals. At this point, most of you might wonder that, I don't really think that marketing matters. We just need to get out there and sell, sell, sell. Did you know that effective marketing can contribute up to 60% of revenue and can produce high return on investment? Marketing is the identification of the correct market and customer. Marketing develops a message and the means by which that message makes it to your customer. When marketing does its job, sales is pushing on an already open door. Without good marketing, sales wastes a massive amount of time trying to find a company and person who can become a paying customer. Sometimes salespeople need to do the marketing, but this is just more work for the sales professional. Do what you can to make sure that professional level marketing is happening at your company. Some of you might feel that business development is really just sales, so there's no need to waste time building strategic relationships that won't put money in the bank. Sometimes the salespeople and sometimes the marketing people need to do the business development. When a skilled business development professional is opening doors for sales by leveraging good marketing, it's a powerful moment for the company. Authentic business development is a playmaker. They may not get the glory, but they make the sale possible just as much as any elite athlete assisting a teammate scoring a winning point. Sales professionals are not individual heroes, they're part of a team. At this point, I need to reiterate that the mindset, sales is just a numbers game, so I just plan on hitting everyone who will listen until I close a deal, is not recommended. Selling to everyone who will listen sounds like a lot of time. The better you can qualify your target in advance, the more likely you'll be to close a higher percentage of everyone with whom you do speak. Talking to everyone is a low percentage scoring game. Work with marketing to understand the market, then use the marketing tools to walk through the doors that have been opened by business development to close a high percentage of deals. Explain consequences of inaction. Never simply do things. Don't just run around selling. Too many people and companies simply take out advertisements in papers or magazines without market research driving the decisions and without having a clear strategy and planning. Then people and companies simply make appointments with people to try to sell their offering, again without supportive research or planning, which means that most people are relying very heavily on luck. If you want to increase your chances of success, then you need to invest action based on good planning. To recap, with all of the above in mind, what will you do to get your first customer? What marketing activities will you perform? What business development activities will be most meaningful and effective? How will you perform sales so that you can generate revenue? But most critically, what is your specific first customer and how will you land their business? Marketing works to identify the ideal location on the planet and to detail the candidates. They prepare messages that will pique the target's interest and then put the message to the target through whatever means will get the potential customer's attention and interest. Business development then secures the strategic alliances that are needed to open doors and remove barriers from the argument over the sale so that you can sell. Sales then works closely with marketing to carefully learn everything that marketing knows. Sales works closely with business development to ensure that they fully understand everything that has been done and why. With this information, they plan their approach to the market, inventorying all candidate prospects, then scoring and prioritizing them according to their probability to close and targeting them.